To SYMPHOS TV, and this evening we have a very distinguished guest, Professor Robin Batterham. Well, Professor Batterham, I could try to introduce you, but there's so many things you've done. I prefer you to introduce yourself. Give us the gist of what you've done, what have you studied, what your interest, what have you done in your career, and what you do now.
Fred, thank you very much. You're very generous there. I've certainly moved around a bit. I've had the pleasure of studying music, studying engineering.
Music?
Yeah.
Great.
That's, I think it's a good combination. Mathematics and science and music often go together.
You're talking about that book by Hofstadter,
Hofstadter, yeah, exactly.
Great book about music and science and creativity.
It certainly is, and indeed when you get onto the topic of creativity and you look at how is it that musicians do the things that they do, you'll find all sorts of interesting things which are relevant to innovation, which are relevant to mining and rock phosphate for that matter. You'll find, for example, if you ask a great performer, I'm not a great performer, but
too modest.
If you ask a great performer, how much do you practice? They will tend to say, oh, not much. But the realities are, if you study this, you find that the great performers do practice a lot.
A lot.
A lot. And the interesting thing is what makes them a great performer is not just what they are born with, it is perhaps that they don't get bored too easily.
Yes.
And that allows them to pay the attention to detail. And when you start thinking about innovation, this actually is also important. You need the off-the-wall types who come up with the ideas, but you need also the types, the characteristics that take this through to real completion. And that does require focus, attention, coming back to something, working on it.
Don't get bored.
So don't get bored on the way through.
Okay, but you're not only a musician, you're much, much more than a musician.
Well, I studied engineering,
yes.
And that was good, and science. Science side has always interested me, and the research and the development and how you can apply it. But I always, having worked for research institutes, having worked for the government, having worked for a large mining company for many years.
Can we name it? It's not
yeah,
secret.
I think you can. Rio Tinto.
Rio Tinto. You've worked for Rio Tinto. Yeah.
So any statements I make have, this is the warning, any statements I make are nothing to do with official
because you are retired
Tinto,
from Rio Tinto.
Because I'm retired from Rio Tinto.
But what do you do now?
So what do I do now? I work at the University of Melbourne, and this is very much tied up with innovation. It's tied up with innovation and trying to use less energy in the mineral processing that goes on in the mining industry.
Okay.
I've particularly enjoyed visiting here to the SYMPHOS conference or symposium because so far my exposure to this part of what I would call the overall mining industry is very small.
All right.
As a vacation student actually, but then also seeing some of it on the way through. And I think there are opportunities for more collaboration in the mining industry overall to share the development of some of the innovations that we have to have. So this has been, for me, an excellent chance.
Even if it's not the same domain of mining, because Rio Tinto is not phosphate, basically.
No, Rio Tinto...
it's iron ore.
Rio Tinto has iron ore, coal, diamonds, non-ferrous metals, aluminium.
But still we can...
So it goes on.
You can collaborate with other...
But not in rock phosphate. It had some rock phosphate deposits many years ago, and it decided to sell them.
Okay.
Whether that was a good or bad decision, time will tell. But the elements of sustainability in mining and the innovations that are going on to make it happen are something which I think is fairly common across the industries. It's an interesting match because while some elements are common, always in a mining situation, the individual mine has its own characteristics and the individual ore has its own characteristics. So you can't say there's one universal solution. But what you can say is that the way people are moving in mining now, with more automation for better control of grade, with data mining so that you measure the grade of every bucket, every scoopful, and you're really mining data rather than mining rocks as such. And you are deciding as it comes through just how you will process almost on a bucket by bucket full case. So the world of mining is changing.
This is indeed new, because I was a mining engineer 25 years ago, and you're absolutely right, we didn't do that. So it's a new development, and you're telling me that it's happening in all kinds of operation.
Well, in the northwest of Western Australia, in the iron ore mines, they look within 3 years now, just one mining company having 150 totally autonomous trucks, autonomous drills, the whole lot automated, minimum stockpiles, ideally no stockpile at all. Your trains or pipeline, if you have pipelines, are the stockpile, and you load onto shipping the actual composition that you want from 2 or 3 different working phases or working mines.
Isn't it something that Toyota invented 20 years ago when it comes to making cars?
It's
like
very much,
zero stock, zero nothing. Like
it's very much the same sort of process where you are saying that actually mining is a manufacturing process. And you treat it the same. And when you start to do that, you start to see different ways of operating, different ways of laying out a mine, for example. So you minimize movement of the equipment that you have, different layouts in terms of where you put overburden material, how you might treat it, how you might mix it with fines if you were doing a fines washing and where it might be placed. All sorts of possibilities when you automate.
This kind of high-tech mining, everything you've said shouts innovation in a way, because everything you said is you have to innovate to do that. We are going to high-tech mining, everything you said. So let's switch to innovation, because this is the second SYMPHOS. You didn't attend the first SYMPHOS 2 years ago. You
no, unfortunately.
First
time in Morocco. Very much enjoying it. Oh, absolutely.
Say yes, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But okay, so let's switch to innovation. I want to ask you 2 questions. The first one is personal, your own ideas of innovation. What is it? Definition, philosophy. And then, because actually you are, I don't know if it's the right word to say you're a practical man. I mean, you're not highfalutin ideas, you do things, right? So how do you manage innovation? That would be my second question. The first one is almost philosophical. What is innovation for you?
It's interesting. It's a word which I wish we had a different word in English at least. And it's like talking about engineering. As an engineer, someone who comes along with an oil can and lubricates a wheel, as opposed to the French usage of the word, which emphasizes the ingeniousness of what's involved. So if we come to innovation, many people think of it more as having an idea, and that's innovative. And the answer is no, it's not, actually.
I mean, suddenly something appears, you have an idea.
Invention and ideas are the start of a journey. Innovation is about the whole journey and arriving at a successful end. If you haven't got through to the successful end and are now doing something differently, or selling a different product, or putting a different overburden out into the environment for long-term stability, if you haven't done those things, you haven't innovated. So what it is there's the idea, there's the journey. It's only when it's complete that it's innovation. Now, in terms of the practicalities of this, there's something extraordinary. If I look at, just jumping back to music, if I look at music and I say, why is it that in France, the number of people that have perfect pitch or absolute hearing, translating from the German, is roughly just under half the population?
In France?
In France. And if I go to, this by the way was about 30 years ago, it may not be now.
I don't know.
And if I go to Australia and look at the same results, it is very small.
Really? I didn't know
So
that.
you ask, how can this be that you have the absolute pitch much higher in France than what you have in Australia? I cannot comment on Morocco because I do not remember seeing any figures.
Myself, no. Yeah.
However, the answer to this is that it's about repeated exposure and experience in singing.
All right.
And the more often you sing with others and perhaps with some instruments or with a pitch pipe to get the right note to start, the more often it locks into your brain.
You hear this is the A, this is A, this is A,
Exactly.
this is A, this is A,
Exactly.
and then A starts
And
being
it can
grafted on your memory.
And it can be so fine. You're certainly not born with it because that's absolutely
No,
clear.
nobody's
because
born with
different
perfect
cultures.
pitch.
So the interesting thing there is something about exposure and practice.
Okay.
Now, with innovation, you can say every time you innovate, it's something new here. Might be somebody else's idea that you've shamelessly stolen. That's fine, as long as you tell them you've done it. That's fine.
I do something with your
them.
idea.
Absolutely acknowledge them. And then you've brought it through and you've got a new product or a new process in the marketplace. So this all says new, 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 new all along the way. The remarkable thing about innovation is that the more you do of it, like singing in perfect pitch, the better you get at it.
At it. I see.
So
I see.
this then suggests that more exposure to innovation and more involvement with it means that the chance of failure, because you will fail with some of the innovations, is reduced. And there are only two ways you can reduce the failure rate or increase the success rate. One is by having people who have experience in innovation, because they understand that up front you want lots of ideas and forming things, and later on, as we mentioned, you've got to have the delivery. They understand that process. Whereas some people, generally with not much curly hair left, but nevertheless with curly hair, every day they want to do something new. They're excited, they've dreamed up a new way of doing it. And the answer is, that's fine at the start. But now that we've got to deliver, sorry, we're going to deliver this one, not start again. So you need this mix and match. You need the experienced people to understand it. But there's one other that's, I think, quite critical, and you have alluded to it. You need actually to understand the basics of what you are doing. If, for example, you are taking rock phosphate, grinding it up, and in a wet process, removing some of the minerals by flotation, you need to understand the basics of flotation. You need to understand, for example, can you actually handle material at a slightly coarser size or finer size, and why does the chemistry change? What will that do to your process? What will that do to your products, and so on? So this combination of experience and innovation, but connected through to people who understand the basics.
Have to understand the basic.
And I think this latter one, this understanding basics, is where many companies, and I won't say Rio Tinto or OCP because that would not be appropriate, perhaps have quite an opportunity more in the future for better connection between those that understand, really understand basics, and those that are busy doing innovations.
Yes, but this calls for a good management, because you can have both kind of people in the same company. Maybe they never meet each other, they never talk to each other. Actually, they can distrust each other. So it goes for management, it goes for vision from above, it goes for management. Do you manage innovation? Can we manage innovation?
A lot of people seem to think that because innovation is about something new, hasn't been tried, this is all unmanageable, and the answer is no, it's not. There are about three very clear rules of the game I would suggest here. First of all is that you must have leadership from the top.
Leadership from the top.
If the people at the top do not want to see innovation,
it will not happen.
It will not happen. They will see that it is costing money to make these things. They will see that sometimes it's not working. They will hear the people doing it, and these people will be saying, this will cost so much and we will deliver it in 6 months' time, and 12 months later it has cost twice as much and hasn't been delivered. You must have the vision at the top, yes. And that vision has got to be something which is reasonably doable, if I can call it that. So that's the first bit of it. Secondly, in the innovation, you've alluded to the fact that you're likely to have a mix and match of people, and people that may not trust each other, because they are such different types. Now, you could do the psychological screening and pick the people with a Myers-Briggs aspect of a certain way, or a QNQP index, or what have you. And I've looked at this in a large company who will remain nameless in this particular case, and found quite remarkably that of all of the research managers, and that's a number of people working in innovation and development globally, a large number of them were what I would call deliverer types.
Okay.
Tell me what you want, and I'll deliver it. Thank you very much. Okay. And only about 10% were invent the future types.
Okay. Yes.
And the trust between them was not very great. Now, you can argue as to whether you need 20% there and 80 there, or 10, 90, or 30, 70. That's not the point. If they can't see the relative merits of working with each other. So the second point is that you have to have people systems that allow respect and in fact cultivate it.
And trust.
And trust. When I ran a research institute for the government many years ago, I found something remarkable. I found that people with ideas held them like this.
They held their ideas like that.
And
like a baby.
Exactly. And this is my
like
idea.
A baby, exactly.
It's very precious. And with it, I will become famous, or I will take out a patent,
get the Nobel Prize.
I will, well, who knows? And I looked at this and thought, this is crazy, because always, if you take an idea and you share it with someone, you will find or with a few someones, you will find most times that the idea grows into something better.
Okay.
It's like using fertilizer on plants, actually. You might say the plant is an idea, share a bit of fertilizer with it, and you end up with something better, but without pushing that analogy.
Yes.
So in this particular institute, I gave people 2 options at the end of the year for the breakup, which was to say, here is an envelope. You open the envelope, and by lunchtime, I want you, this was to the research managers, I want you to go away and invent something that is patentable by lunchtime in an area that you have never seen before. And to the rest of them, the suggestion was we should all go over to the university next door, where there's going to be a concert at lunchtime. It's an all-Bach concert, and it's on a very good organ. And for many of you, that will be painful. So you take your pick. You do the invention, or you come to the concert. No guessing who was giving the concert. And would you believe that by about 50-50 was the way they split. And over a period of 3 years that I ran this little joke, really, as a contest, some of the ideas in those patents turned out to be excellent, were patented, and were some of the best commercial patents that research institute had ever come up with.
That's incredible.
What it showed was that the idea side is actually fairly straight ahead. And holding it to yourself because you think you will do better to do so is actually wrong. So second big point is that you've got to have people who perhaps understand the realities of innovation and are prepared to talk across the divide. And then the third one is a bit unfortunate, is to say you must have systems in a company,
yes.
actually it applies to a country as well, but that's a different story. You must have systems in a company that limit the number of things in the